Okay, when I talked to Sanjit Bunkaroy, who's sitting here beside me, he said, well, you do it the wrong way. You know, you introduce people by saying what kind of degrees they have and that sort of stuff. You will notice why he doesn't like degrees so much. He said, well, if you introduce me, just say, I'm working in a village and I live in a village. The only thing I was allowed to add was that the village is in Rajasthan.
I said my love teacher, Barefoot College is quite like a shooting.
Your Holiness, when I was a very young boy, you came to our school with the Panchen Lama in the Doon School.
Oh, I see. Then 56.
Yes. I got a very snobbish, elitist, expensive education in India. I went to the Doon School and I went to the St. Stephen's College in Delhi. And I was all set because you know what Indian families are like. They have your future all laid out for you. And my future was all laid out for me by the family. And the jobs were all laid out and waiting for me. Then there was the Bihar famine in 1965 when Jayaprakash Narayan said, appealed to the young people to come to villages to help in the Bihar famine. And I went to the Bihar famine in 1965. And it changed my life. Because when I came back, I told my mother that I'd like to live and work in a village. My mother went into a coma. Because she couldn't understand what happened in 14 days in the Bihar famine to me. And everything was laid out. And then she asked the next difficult question, which was, what do you want to do in a village? I said, I want to be an unskilled laborer digging wells. That upset her even more. And she didn't speak to me for many years because I had brought the image of the family down by going and living in a village. I went to the village, this village which I'm working in for the last 40 years, in 1971. The formal education that I had, I thought, was good because it made you arrogant, it made you conceited, it made you think that you had the answers to everything. You know what these expensive education can do to you, Holiness? It can destroy you. So when I went to the village for the first time, the elders came to me and said, are you running from the police? I said, no. You didn't get a government job? I said, no, that's not true. Did you fail in your exam? This was the attitude that the formal system gave you in India, I believe all over the world, that you are supposed to go up, Paris, Zurich, New York. If you come back to a village, it is a punishment. Something is wrong with you. But for 5 years, I dug wells as an unskilled laborer. And that was when I was exposed to the most extraordinary skills and knowledge and wisdom that very poor people have. Extraordinary. Which does not come in the books. It does not come in the university. It does not come in colleges. You don't read about it. You have to feel it. And I felt that this extraordinary knowledge and skill and wisdom needed to be brought into mainstream thinking. So that was when I started what I called the Barefoot College in Rajasthan. It's a very small village in Tilonia. And when I spoke to the poor, they said, please, there are some things in the college that you must not do. I said, what is that? He said, please don't bring anyone with a degree and qualification into your college. So anyone with a PhD and an MSc is disqualified to come to the college. It has to be someone who works with his hands. Dignity of labor. It has to be someone who respects knowledge and skills which are available in village communities, which is much more important than what comes from the West. It has to be someone who believes in simplicity, living the life of the poor. So it is one of the only colleges in India which believes in the lifestyle and work style of Mahatma Gandhi. We sit on the floor, we eat on the floor, we work on the floor, and no one gets more than $100 a month, ever. Because you don't come for the money, you come for the challenge. You come to work with the poor, and you have to show that you have an example that you can set, that other people will match and follow. So the economic model today, I do not accept, because it is top down. It comes from the top, somewhere in the West, somewhere in Delhi, and they bring it down to a village. When there is so much knowledge and skills below, why aren't we developing that first? And only then, if that knowledge is not up to date or needs to be upgraded, then you bring the knowledge from outside. But please develop the capacity and competence of people who are very poor to develop themselves. This is the most important thing that I think we need to tell the West. How do you develop yourself with the capacity and the knowledge that you have? So when I said that, they said, well, you have to show that you can do it. So we built the Barefoot College in 1986. It is the only college built by someone who still can't read and write today. Can't read and write today. But he built it at $1.50 a square foot. It is the only...
$1.50 square foot really.
It is a college where we believe that you can bring in the most sophisticated technology without, not at the expense of, traditional wisdom and technology. So it is the only college in India which is fully solar energized. All the power from the college comes from the sun. I have 45 kilowatts of panels, all my 30 computers, my telephone exchange, my electronic mail, everything works off the sun. But it was installed and fabricated by a Hindu priest who had done only 8 years of schooling. He knows more about solar energy than anybody I know from any university anywhere in the world. We said, where is it written that just because you can't read and write, you cannot become an architect, you cannot become a dentist, you cannot become an engineer, you cannot become a water or solar engineer? Where is it written? It's just in our mind that we think that you have to learn how to read and write. Your Holiness, you agree? Do you agree? It is the first fully solar electrified college in India. So what we did was that we took people from the village who had never been to formal education, and we trained them to be teachers, doctors, engineers, architects, working in computers. This is a lady who is a dentist. In another 6 months, this lady who is a grandmother, who doesn't know how to read and write, will perform a root canal. Amazing. The college only believes in solar cooking. We don't take gas. It's only solar cooking from the sun. And this solar cooker has been fabricated by 4 illiterate women. It's the most sophisticated parabolic solar cooker you can have, Your Holiness. These women are illiterate, but unfortunately they are almost half German.
Half German.
Because they are so precise.
Yes.
A little bit here, a little bit there, it can go wrong. So they have to be very, very... And Indian women, by and large, are not so precise. You know, they're very casual.
Tibetan also like that.
So these women have formed an association and they fabricate solar cookers and sell them in the villages to make sure that they don't use kerosene and wood for cooking. We also believe that traditional knowledge and culture must not lose the importance and relevance. So we believe in puppetry. Wherever there is no radio, no written word, no television, in many parts of India today, traditional puppetry is very important. And this is how we... Your Holiness, there are string puppets which you find in 5-star hotels where they talk about kings and queens.
Right.
This is a glove puppet which you can talk to 5,000 people. These glove puppets talk about social messages, why you should not beat your wife, why you should have clean drinking water, why you should send your child to school. All this through the puppet. And these puppets are made out of recycled World Bank reports.
World Bank
We run schools at night, Your Holiness.
World Bank.
We run schools at night, Your Holiness, when children can't go to school in the morning. But they go to school at night, because in the morning they're looking after cattle and goats and sheep. But what do you do about the children who can't go to school in the morning? So we run the schools at night, all solar lit at night. But the beauty is that all these children who go to our night schools, about 7,000 of them in 150 schools, have an election. We believe that the children must know about citizenship, must know about democracy, must know how to elect the right leader. So we have an election. And every 3 years, we have a children's parliament, a prime minister who is 12 years old, who looks after 20 goats in the morning, but she is prime minister in the evening. She has a cabinet. And they monitor and supervise their own schools. And every decision that the children take, we have to implement. Because it's the cabinet after all. It's the Prime Minister after all. The Prime Minister got the World's Children's Prize 4 years ago. 12 years old. Never left her village in her life, and she went to the Queen of Sweden to get her prize. The Queen of Sweden couldn't believe that this young girl, 12 years old, not dazzled by anything around her. So she asked me to ask the Prime Minister, where has she got her confidence from? So I asked the Prime Minister, I asked her, where did you get your confidence from? She looked very insulted and looked straight at the Queen and said, please tell her I'm the Prime Minister. Because we have solar electrified the villages in Rajasthan, we extended the technology of going all over India. So if you see the map, Your Holiness, we have actually gone from Ladakh all the way to Bhutan. We have solar electrified 600 villages all over India. And we went to Ladakh in the Nubra Valley, near the Saichen Glacier. Minus 40, as you know, Your Holiness.
Yes.
Very cold. And we asked the woman, this is the one in Ladakh which we solar electrified, we asked the woman, what is the benefit you have received from solar energy? And this woman thought for a minute and said, it's the first time I can see my husband's face in winter. We extended this technology, Your Holiness, to Afghanistan. When we went to Afghanistan for the first time in the history of Afghanistan, we went to the woman and said, why don't we take a woman to train as an engineer? The men said, not possible. You know, they don't even get out of their room and you want to take them to India. I said, I'll promise to make a concession, I'll take the husband along too. So the husband came. 2005, we taught these women and we solar electrified the first 5 villages ever in Afghanistan. The women did it. My best woman solar engineer is a grandmother of 55 years old. She is illiterate, but she has solar electrified 200 houses for me in Afghanistan, and even till today, it is still working. I asked her to speak to some engineers in Afghanistan, and she spoke to some engineers in Afghanistan, and taught an engineer the difference between AC and DC. The engineer didn't know. And it was a grandmother who told her the difference between AC and DC. Today, those 3 women have trained 27 more women in Afghanistan, and they have solar electrified 100 villages in Afghanistan. When I went to the United Nations, we made a film and said to bring 3 women and 3 women and 7 men to India. Trained them for 6 months, bought the airfare, bought 140 panels, solar electrified 5 villages, transported, insured everything in 6 months. And we said, guess how much it cost? So the UN people, as you know, they're very expensive, and they couldn't understand how much it could be. I said, it's the cost of 1 UN consultant sitting in 1 year in Kabul. So we said that this is a scandal that there are 700 consultants sitting in Kabul from the UN, and there is not one village which has been solar electrified today. So, Your Holiness, we learnt a very important lesson. The important lesson we learnt was that men are untrainable. Men are restless, men are ambitious, men are compulsively mobile, and they all want a certificate. And the moment you give them a certificate...
But you yourself?
Your Holiness, I'm a lost case.
Really wonderful, really wonderful. Yes.
And the moment you give them a certificate, they will leave the village in 1 day and look for a job in a city.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
So for me, the best investment are grandmothers. The best. The grandmothers are between 40 and 50 years old. They are the most mature, they are the most tolerant, and they have so much courage. These women you see here are from all over Africa. They have never been outside the village, and they come for 6 months to the Barefoot College.
African.
Yeah, African.
Oh, yes, yes. Oh.
They are illiterate. They have to be from a village which they have never left. And the government of India has given me a blank check. I fly them with the government of India money to India. And 6 months training. And through sign language and sight and sound, without the written word, without the spoken word, in 6 months we trained them to be solar engineers.
秘书大姐，通几个challenge，通几个challenge。
They all talk to each other, but they can't understand the word. But the body language is so good that you can see that they want to learn. But the first thing we tell them is that they are the first and only woman in your country who will become an engineer. So please remember you are ambassadors. They come as mothers and they go back like tigers. They walk out of the plane with so much confidence because they know they are the engineers of their country. And it is amazing to see the transformation from a mother, just a grandmother. And this is something that we are very, and we are trying to do this in India. So Your Holiness, if you have a grandmother that you would like to send to the Barefoot College, we'll be delighted. I would like to show a small film on how we do it. We were told in school that going to Timbuktu was going to the middle of nowhere. It was a mythical place created by the imagination and the creative mind. In October 2006, Timbuktu was visited for the first time by an Indian in recent memory. The idea was to work through an indigenous organization to select remote rural villages where there was no hope ever of conventional grid reaching them and providing lighting through solar power. Timbuktu is not in the middle of the Sahara Desert, but on the Niger River, and it is the rice and wheat bowl of Mali. It takes 2 days by road and 7 days by boat from Bamako to Timbuktu. Thus basic provisions are scarce and expensive. If a village in Timbuktu could be solar electrified against such tremendous odds, adopting a barefoot approach, then it was possible to replicate this process anywhere. The village of Tinjamban was selected by the Norwegian Church Aid through their local partner Ahmad. Ahmad has been working there for over 10 years. The village is 25 kilometers away from Timbuktu, where the source of income is animal husbandry, farming and handicrafts. All work in the house is completed before the sun sets. The light from candles and torches and kerosene lamp is not enough for the children to read. Some do not have any light at all. It is a nomadic village of some 92 houses, and some houses are with traditional architecture. The village has a school and a mosque. The language they speak is Tamba Sheikh and French. The whole village was stunned when it was suggested that 2 illiterate women with no formal education be sent to India for training as barefoot solar engineers. But after several meetings with the whole community, 2 decisions were taken. First, that the community agreed to pay in writing 1,000 CFA for each solar unit per month. Second, that they would send 2 women for training to Tilonia. The first was Aminata, 40-year-old widow with 3 children, living with her brother and father. She was illiterate, lives in a mud house and a tent. The second was Haja, also 40-years-old widow with 1 daughter and no educational qualifications, and also living in a mud house and a tent. Ahmad and Norwegian Church Aid arranged for their passports, and on the 25th of January 2007, they arrived in Tilonia. It was the first time they traveled so far away from home. For 6 months, from January 2007 to June 2007, they stayed in Tilonia, learning through sign language how to fabricate sophisticated charge controllers, inverters, and install solar panels and link them to deep cycle batteries. Their extraordinary guts to come to a strange country in a strange land and learning about solar technology when they had never ever been to school. But they met these almost formidable hurdles with grace, dignity, patience, and the willingness to learn, never ever saying they could not do it. On July 7th, 2007, they went back to Mali supremely confident and showing their awesome capacity to tackle this task of electrifying their own village with grace and dignity. They had to wait for 3 months for the solar equipment to arrive. The support of the Indian Embassy in Senegal helped release the equipment quickly. On December the 17th, 2007, it was a big day for the village because that was the day when all the solar units were distributed to the whole village of Tinjamban. It was the first Tuareg village ever to be fully solar electrified in the Sahara and indeed West Africa. It was the first village ever to be solar electrified in just 10 days by illiterate Tuareg women who had never been outside the country and who had been trained as barefoot solar engineers in India. It took the two women 7 to 10 days to solar electrify the whole village. What difference has solar electrified houses made to their lives? The women can now cook at night in the open with solar lanterns. They can work on increasing their income by making handicraft items at home. Children can study at night without damaging their eyes. Women do not have to walk for miles to the city and stand in line to purchase kerosene in black market rates, spending 3,000 to 4,000 FCFA per month. Now they spend only 1,000 CFA per month.
Sitting in Tinjamban under the light of India, we are very happy tonight because it was very, very dark in Tinjamban before.
Two extraordinary but very ordinary women from Timbuktu have set an example for the whole of Africa and demonstrated how the impossible is possible. Your Holiness, we have covered 21 countries in Africa. We've trained over 100 grandmothers from these countries. We have solar electrified 7,000 houses, and it's all at the cost of $2 million, which is what Mr. Jeff Sachs spends on one village in Africa. Only one village. So if there's so much money, why don't we spread it? I will end with a quotation of Mahatma Gandhi, who said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win.
Really wonderful. I have, so to say, conviction, and also telling my Indian friend in India, the real transformation of India must start from countryside and the village. So I think you really, the work is that. And then I think India as an example, I think the rest of the world, and particularly the southern world, those poorer countries, and I think the 6 billion human beings as a whole, I think the majority are poor. So, without much expenses, some real transform on that level. That is the real sort of hope. Real, I think, real change of the 6 million human beings, I think, through that way. A few big cities in India, I usually telling, Bangalore or Hyderabad, big cities, highly, rapidly developed, but that's not a real transformation of India. Real transformation must come from village. So I really appreciate. In the meantime, I want some of you also, the illiterate teacher or engineer, come to our settlement, Tibetan settlement. And now we also, you see, the young Tibetan is very much eager about some certificate. Then usually, you see, go in big cities for job. So the villager, suppose, you see, they, agriculture settlement. But now, more able-bodied people who have some education prefer is to go outside. So now, our sort of fundamental sort of our plan, original our plan, now really, because of the damaging or difficult.
Becoming difficult.
So they use your method. I really want to invite you, if, when you have some time.
Oh, well, that's for you anytime.
Because so I think September. 아주 무게한테 손도 사야 돼 그대로고. 벨로그룹 손도 사야 돼 그대로고. Beginning of September,
I'll be there, Holiness.
You see, in our biggest settlement in the Karnataka state,
Yeah.
you see, we going to there and some sort of big meeting.
Discussion.
You see, the all representatives from different settlements used to come. So perhaps at that time, if you go there and give the encouragement, all those, the older generation who some, now I don't know, you see, much of the large number illiterate. But in any way, I think your sort of this because of method, I think very, very sort of fit in our settlement. And then eventually, I think the Chinese also, I think, should learn this. The coastline.
Coastal areas.
Coastal sort of area, much developed, but then interior,
no.
You see, they're very, very poor.
Yeah.
So there also, I think that this method, I think the Indian should be their guru. Teach them how to develop, how to transform. Not from Karl Marx, but from Indian guru. Thank you. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Mathieu, it's your turn, but because I know that you're a very compassionate human being, if you make it, if you make the answer short, there are two things you mentioned on the side. One is migration, and His Holiness just mentioned that if you have the degree, you go to the city. What is attractive in the city? How can you prevent this kind of migration? And talking about China and India, in India you have a very long democratic tradition, you know, going all the way back. In China you don't have that. What kind of difference do you think that makes? And keep in mind, Mathieu would still want to talk.
I believe, Your Holiness, that you have to develop the quality of life of villages to prevent migration. if you give jobs, if you improve the drinking water situation, if you improve the lighting situation, why should anyone in his right mind go into a slum in Mumbai?
Really?
So our job is to make sure that you improve the quality of life of villages and not make people migrate because of economic pressure or environmental pressure. So the Barefoot College believes that if you improve the basic services that she was talking about in a village, and you give them jobs with dignity and self-respect, and not make them beggars, then they will stay. And I think that is the answer. And we have found that when we solar electrified villages in Africa, for the first time the African was coming back to his village because he saw solar light for the first time. So you are reversing migration by bringing in solar lighting in villages. So I think this is the long-term situation. And you have jobs because you are getting the woman, who is the grandmother, being paid by the community to look after the repair and maintenance. You see? She is an engineer. She is not a woman anymore.
I think better mention the women engineer. Rather than no woman, that's not good.
Women grandmother engineer.
No, that's good, very good.
Thanks. Matthew, it's your turn.
Well, about the migration, I keep on telling of my young Tibetan friends in Kathmandu. Their dream is to go washing dishes in New York.
Yes.
I've been to New York, and I'm really happy to live in Nepal and India. Well, I could have stayed also, tried to wash dishes in New York, and I felt the life was much better there. It's such an illusion. So I think in all the debate that we had, there's one very powerful force of moving toward altruism that we may not have fully considered, is the grassroots NGOs. This is happening all over the place. I mean, your example is magnificent and humbling. But there are so many other, on smaller scale, medium scale. There are now young people, even in developed countries, much more than 20 years ago, who say, I don't want to go to Wall Street, I want to see how I can work in humanitarian work from both sides. Just to give you a small example that goes along with your story. We have a friend in Nepal that we are supporting now, who was dismayed by the number of kids running around in villages or in the street without, getting all the problems for lack of education. The problem is the parents come to the sort of agglomeration and cities. They have to work very hard. They sort of park the kids in the daytime in a kind of big room, feed them at night. Of course, the kids not going to stay. They start roaming the street, they start stealing, they start sniffing glue and stuff like that. So he thought, he went to all the families of a village and asked 2 bamboos per family and start to make a very small school. That was 10 years ago. He had absolutely no money in his pocket. Now, there are 20,000 children in those bamboo schools. It's all made with bamboo. It means if there's earthquakes, they shake a little bit, nothing will happen. It's perfectly ecological. When I see a school built of concrete, I say, what's the waste? You can, in 2.5 months, build a school for 2,500 kids for $50,000. That's also hard to beat. And the idea is to go to 150,000 or something in Nepal. So we are trying to help to build 4, 5, 6 every year. And there are 75% girls, only 25% of those useless boys. Another small example, a village in Bihar. There's someone there who started a small program. The first year he gave a chicken to a woman and give her a bank account booklet with a little seed money with which she will send the school to the children to the school. The drunk husband has no signature on the account. Otherwise he'll empty it to buy home sort of local made alcohol. Now if she succeeds, if the kids have attended to school, the second year she'll give a goat to that lady, to that mother. And if the kids continue to go to school and she managed to keep that small capital, sending the milk from the goat, without the husband taking everything. The third year is to give a cow. And the fourth year, help to build a more decent house. So those endeavors, those are two examples. But there are so many everywhere. And those NGOs, because they are so dedicated, they don't have 60% overhead as some of those multinational so-called NGOs. They have between 3 and 5%. So once I asked one of those big organizations, if you have, we have one small one like that, which has done 40 projects. It's not very much, but we still kept 5% overhead. If those great big organizations could federate 100 NGOs like ours, who do 30, 40 projects with 3%, you will have 3,000 projects with still 5% overhead, and that will be grassroots projects. So I think the power of NGOs is a very, very powerful force to bring from the people that movement toward a more cooperative, altruistic, dedicated society. And that somehow of course the microcredit is encouraging them, but we should think more how the big established organization, if they ever want to think doing such a difference on the ground, should somehow help them to be organized a little bit better, perhaps.
True. Very true. Okay.
Well, I don't think there's anything to add, huh? So I thank everybody very much. And if you want, we see each other in like 20 minutes.